Okay, let's take a look at how the line down event is handled. And before we go there, I warn you that this is going to end in a grand disaster first. And actually, that is a very good learning experience on how to debug applications with multiple threads and especially timing, where timing is important. So, as you can see, I have a breakpoint there at message and line down, not line up now because I want to just handle that line down event. So I put a line up and then line down, and we can go and see what happens here. Jump in or step in the line down implementation, where the call is forwarded to the protocol implementation. Again, we have to use logs because we are probably potentially changing the state of the protocol. And again, you have to check that the current state is actually line up and the user did that line up, because otherwise, of course, we must not put the line down. Okay, so calculate now the timestamp for the line down event, again according to the protocol specifications. Let's do that. But if you take a look at the value we got, minus 16,509, how can a duration of the lineup, which is the value here that we want to send, it cannot be negative. Duration cannot be negative. What went wrong here? What went wrong is that we are using breakpoints in debugging. It took so long a time here to arrive here that this value, the duration in milliseconds, cannot fit into a short integer with 16 bytes. What happens when the value is too long to fit there? Imagine that you are starting from 0, adding values to this short. When you add more than it can fit, it rolls back to the end of that value range, which is minus something, and starts then again increasing towards 0, and then from 0 onwards again to the maximum value a short can handle, and again it starts from the very smallest value, minus something, and increases it. So this is what happened. It took so long time for us stepping the code to arrive here that the value rolled to a negative value. Another reason in applications like this to use log, run the application without breakpoints and use the log to analyze what happens, especially if something goes wrong for your debugging purposes. Of course, you can use breakpoints if you are aware of these things happening. Like in this case, we can just forget what happens next because that negative value is never sent. As you can see, the protocol writer down here. Oh, we went too far. Down here, if the short value is greater than 0, it will send it, but it's not. It's negative, so it will not be sent. And of course, the state of the application is also something quite strange from this point now onwards. So we just let the application run. We might even have to disconnect and connect again, because what happens next may not be a very good state for the application anymore. Well, actually, we don't have to do that because that timestamp is again calculated the next time line up is line down is happening. So We don't have to care about that. So how to solve this problem? One way is to not use the breakpoints. The other is to set a breakpoint here where that value is actually calculated in the protocol implementation. Let's say, for example, here we can enable these breakpoints at the same time too when we are here, because we need them later, and go more like quickly there, so that this value is somewhat realistic, at least. So we do that. Now again, let's skip this, because I again spent so much time explaining everything that the value would be again something not very sensible. And now when we go there, quickly reach that breakpoint, and now this value is something that is more realistic in our case. So this is very important for you to understand and learn. Sorry. You have to understand that timing is often important in embedded systems, and debugging line by line messes up your timing. So after learning this, we can now continue seeing what is actually happening in the application and go through towards the end of this code walkthrough session. Let's check that in the writer we have a breakpoint there. We can actually meet. Yes. No, actually we didn't. Let's put them there. So we can now see what is then happening in sending the line down event. Okay. So now, as with sending, we open the condition variable, set the line up by user to false now. And if the line is not up by the server either, then we know that we can change the state of the protocol to line down. And here then actually notify the listener about it. Okay, so let's resume. We can see that now the writer thread resumes, acquires the lock, but actually it's reserved by the main thread. We made a breakpoint here too, and the lock is not yet released, so the writer is now waiting for that to happen. So we handle the state change, release the lock, notify the listener. But let's again check that I have a breakpoint here that we can then use to follow what happens here. Yes, we do. So I can then resume like this, and then we can see that now this short value is sensible, and we will send it. This send message with short version is very exactly the same than the long version, the int version. So prepare the buffer, get the byte array, write it to the output stream, flush it so that the socket is immediately sending our data, not buffering it, and then again calls the condition variable and release the lock. Okay, so now we have sent line down message to the server side. Okay, but remember that learning from the beginning of this video section. If you debug with breakpoints applications that have these timing requirements, and it uses time and duration and calculates time and duration, then using breakpoints to test and debug your application actually can lead you to serious problems if you are not aware what happens. And it's much better to use the log prints in those cases to see what is happening and when. So use the log prints a lot. Try to make them so that you actually can then understand when you are looking at the log of the application, what is happening, even though you have multiple threads here. So you have to think carefully the name of the tag parameter to the log function and what you are actually writing here. Writing here as a log message to understand by reading only this log what is happening in your application. Very important stuff. Okay, so this concludes the sending line and up and down messages from the user side to the server code walkthrough.